Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hopkinton Works. I'm your guest host, Jim Cousins. I am not Norman Khumalo, as you saw in the credits. I am here because this episode is a very special episode of Hopkinton Works. Here, our guest is Norman Khumalo, and we're going to talk a little bit about his life and his passion and how he came to be in Hopkinton and what he's going to be doing. So thank you for joining us for this special episode. Norman, thank you for being here.
Jim, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know, it's been my great pleasure to know you in your role for the past 15 years. So I'm very much looking forward to having this conversation.
Same here.
All right, so let's start it all off with you, about where you came from and where you grew up and what it was like.
I grew up in Bulawayo. It's the second largest city in Zimbabwe. And in fact, my life was between Bulawayo, which is the urban city, and Ngai, which is the traditional home. You may know from the history of Zimbabwe that colonialism divided the lives of Africans into two: the city, where you come and work, and the village, where you live your traditional life.
Okay.
I went to primary school in Bulawayo and then took my secondary education at Mpopoma High School. And after that, I completed my A-levels at Founders High School, which in fact, again, is another relic from our colonial history. Founders High School was designed and came into being as a school for coloreds. There were schools for blacks, schools for coloreds, and schools for whites.
Okay.
So after my O-levels, I went to do my A-levels at a former colored school. That's the history of Zimbabwe. And after that, I went to university in Zimbabwe. I studied for a sociology degree, undergraduate, and then completed a graduate degree in regional and urban planning.
Okay.
Worked for the city of Bulawayo as a planner. And after that, I was fortunate to get a scholarship to study for a second graduate degree in Canada at Carleton University in Ottawa.
Okay.
And that was in public administration.
Now, so you went through that really fast, right?
Yes.
So I'm interested, when you were going through your secondary education and your higher education, like, what were you dreaming of? What did you want to do as your career?
That's a great question. Let me tell you, Jim, I just wanted to be a bus driver.
Really?
Yes. Growing up in the village, bus drivers had the best jobs.
Okay.
They would drive to the city, come back to the village with all kinds of good things. And in fact, when they came to the village, they got so many presents from the people who were thanking them for bringing stuff for them to the village. So growing up, I just wanted to be a bus driver. And then as I progressed with my education, I found my passion in understanding how communities work. That's why I went to study sociology.
Okay.
And as I went deeper into sociology, I became more fascinated with the structures that help a community to reproduce itself, as well as how the communities create wealth. That's how I came into community development. And in Zimbabwe, in 1980, we gained our independence. And the biggest challenge for the country is how do we transition from a divided community into one, as Mandela called South Africa, rainbow nation. How do we all come together? And I thought that being a planner would have a significant role, substantial role in helping Zimbabwe transition from a colonial society to a post-colonial society.
Right. Now, I can see the progression from a young Norman wanting to be the bus driver and seeing like what that means in your community to going to working with communities and helping them transition and helping them be the best that they can be. Was that a gradual, or was that like, as they say, an awakening awareness where one day you said, oh, this is actually what I want to be doing, and went in that direction?
I think it was gradual. There's one thing that I always want to share about the community that I grew up in. There's a belief that pre-colonial societies in Africa did not have any governance structure. The opposite, in fact, is what happened. The community I come from, traditionally, very deliberative, very clear organizational structure, and was able to transition from, at one point, we were in South Africa, moved the whole nation into Zimbabwe. And so I come from that background where sense of community as a collective and as a means of creating a nation has been part of us. And thus, growing up in the village, I was fascinated when the chief had that perhaps quarterly meeting with the villagers to discuss the next big project for the village, or in some cases, dealing with conflict resolution. As kids, we were not allowed at those meetings, but I can tell you, I can assure you, there were many moments where I purposely drove my goats to just pass by and see what was happening. So in a way, I grew up fascinated by how do communities actually work.
That is actually really fascinating, you know, and I can't wait. We'll get to this point where I'm really interested in how that informed your work in a small town in America. So, but now we left off where you went to Canada to get another degree. And what happened after that?
I decide perhaps international development is the area where I could make a difference. I was fortunate to be offered a job by Oxfam America here in Boston. I was responsible for its Southern Africa program. And a couple years into that, I became the Africa Regional Director. So I was then now right in the middle, in the heart of community development in the context of globalization. So think of it this way. I transitioned from a village to being an urban planner.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing community development in the international field or arena.
Wow. What is that? What is community in the international field? Like, what did you actually do?
We identified partners who were already helping themselves. For example, it could be in the context of long-term development. There would be local initiatives around microcredit or microcredit finance.
Yep.
There could be programs around agricultural production. There could also be programs around civic empowerment. And what we will do at Oxfam is to simply step in and help whichever way we could. The ideas were not coming from America. The ideas were coming from the people the partners that we were working with.
Right.
So for me, that was a very empowering approach to community development. People have their own ideas. You simply come in to help the best way you can.
Right. Which is, you know, I think is really important. I think that in the past, America's response has typically been just throw money at the problem, you know, and oftentimes that becomes very misguided. And this way of identifying the people who are already making community work and making their environments better, just like we want to do around here, you're just partnering and coming alongside them and help them.
In fact, throwing money at issues, Oxfam demystified that myth.
Okay.
For the most part, we were doing advocacy. So instead of exchanging money, we will exchange initiatives and programs that are designed to advocate for the global south, be it at the United Nations, be it at the World Bank or the IMF. But even in those cases, it was not the experts from here doing the talking. It was our project partners that we were bringing up here to do their own advocacy. We also did public education. We relied on our partners to come up here and talk to people like yourselves, people who were supporting the Oxfam America programs, about their challenges, their opportunities, and their successes.
Yeah. And what was your area like? Where did you work?
I was based in Boston.
Right.
However, I found myself all over the world.
Really?
For example, I led Oxfam America's response to the genocide in Rwanda. So I spent some time in Rwanda, Burundi, Zaire,
Yeah.
Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, Eritrea, and Djibouti. And then in Southern Africa, we were in Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia, and South Africa. And then we're also in West Africa.
So obviously important work, but it must have been very difficult work too.
It was fun work.
Yeah.
It was fun work.
Okay.
Yes, very difficult. However, when you see communities succeed, it's always gratifying.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
And what was able to get you out of Oxfam? Where did you go next?
Yeah, after Oxfam, as you can tell, it involves heavy lifting. It involves a lot of travel. I decided I needed to take a break from that. And I jumped into a very creative entrepreneurial project that was based in Lawrence at the Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley. We were working on providing transportation for elderly individuals. And the idea actually came from private companies who had identified that their employees were spending a great deal of time of finding resources and also in some cases actually providing the transportation for their elderly parents to medical appointments. So we had IBM, Lotus, Bank Boston back then, HP, all come together and create this grant that I then led towards building a transportation program to help elders get to medical appointments. And we call the program Drive People Happy.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay. How long were you there?
I was there perhaps 1.5 years, and then went back to planning, joined the town of Wesley.
Okay.
And after Wesley, I went to Walpole, Walpole then Westford, Westford then here.
Okay. Now, were those three towns? So you were in public service at that point.
Yes.
In like community, town government.
Yes.
Okay. Is Hopkinton your first position as a town manager?
Town manager, yes. I was the assistant town manager in Westford for about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, what attracted you to Hopkinton?
Here's what attracted me to Hopkinton. One, Hopkinton is a great planning community. I come from a planning background, and in our planning circles, we always had the story about Hopkinton's success in developing plans for the community. For example, East Hopkinton Master Plan.
Yeah.
Very well published in the planning sectors. In fact, I believe the town won an award for that master plan. So there's that history of planning. I have a planning background. And then secondly, Hopkinton was marketed to me as a community in transition. Think back to my growing up, transitioning from the village to the city,
Right.
and then transitioning from the global south to the global north, and also working for Oxfam in programs that focused on countries in transition.
Right.
And the transition that I heard about Hopkinton was that transition from a town that was led by an administrator to a town that had now adopted a new town charter.
Yep.
Yeah, in fact, it's a town that was led by the select board and an administrative secretary, now moving to a town manager form of government. Layered with that is that Hopkinton was also a growing community. My experience was in Westford, one of the fastest growing communities along 495. Hopkinton has a similar situation, it's a growing community. And then thirdly, I also saw Hopkinton as presenting an opportunity to build. And I like building.
Yeah.
I love building institutions. Yeah.
So you really were the first town manager. There was one before you, but he wasn't here very long. And then you came on site and you took over. So it was still a very new transition for our community, having a town manager. How were the early days? Was there a lot of confusion? Was there a lot of different egos trying to, work their will? And how did you find the whole environment when you first came here?
The environment was very encouraging. There was a very clear mandate to the town manager, given to the town manager when I got here. And in fact, think of it, Jim. Remember, I came here in 2009. And how soon we forget that was at the height of an economic crisis facing the nation.
Right, just after 2008
Yes.
housing crash.
Yes. So the mandate I was given was to stabilize the town's financial health.
Okay.
At one of my first meetings, remember, I was given a charge to reduce the budget by $1.5 million. Yeah. So that to me, though, was an opportunity to get the town's finances right, given as a clear charge by the select board. The second charge I was given was to build a team. And that is something that I've always enjoyed doing professionally, finding opportunities to collaborate, similar to what I saw growing up in the village, people collaborating to help each other. I go to work for Oxfam America. I see the same thing. And I come here and say, great.
Right.
We have had departments that work as individual silos. My charge given to me was find a way to get the departments to work together. The third charge that I got from the community was that the residents of Hopkinton matter. The residents of Hopkinton are ready to help. The residents of Hopkinton have very clear ideas on what they want to accomplish over time. That made the job much easier for me. So, to your question, I came into a situation where there were clear charges given to me and the rest of the team. There was great support from the community. And most importantly, the community offered itself to help. And that's been my experience over the last 15 years.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this next question with a quick story that I know I've told you before. The very first time that I met you was in the next room. And we were talking about, and something that was going on, I don't even remember what it was, but there was an issue that was going before town meeting, and there was a group that was advocating against it. And you stood in that room and you said, just bring them in here. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. And I found that to be very impressive. Like, not, well, how do we just convince them, or how do we get our point across, but having a conversation. And putting that together with what you said about your upbringing, I'm curious, what did your growing up environment and your experiences and your passion, because it is a passion for community and connection, how did your past prepare you for this future? Like, what lessons would you say, what morals, what guiding points do you have that you brought to your position here in Hopkinton?
Good question. The guiding philosophy for my community is Ubuntu. I am because you are. So right from the get-go, Norman's upbringing has nothing to do with the I. It's we.
Okay.
When we learn how to hunt, when we learn how to cultivate, when we learn how to head cattle and goats, it's not I, it's we.
Mm-hmm.
And people have asked me, when in fact is your first assignment in terms of public service? It's in the village.
Mm-hmm.
In the village, we always found ways to identify the most vulnerable families. So from the time we're taught, the first assignment you do for the community is to go head cattle. The elderly person who does not have the ability to head their goats and cattle, guess what happens? When I open my kraal to let my goats out, I go to the next homestead for that elderly individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I open their kraal, get their goats out, get their cattle, and we go head them and bring them back.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, when we are cultivating, we have what we call ilima. Ilima is we bring people together to go help others.
Mm-hmm.
There's no pay, you don't get paid. Yeah, it's simply a community event. We gather, we bring all our resources to go help somebody else. So I grew up in an environment where cooperative work, collaborative work, collective effort is the norm. What did that then teach me in terms of my current work? One, everybody matters. All viewpoints matter. My job, if I am in the leadership role, is to make sure that I facilitate all perspectives. Finally, we do better as a community when we can bring different ideas together. Mm-hmm. It's that whole deliberative process that the Ndebele, the Zulu, the Shona in Zimbabwe were all known for.
Mm. Was it difficult bringing that perspective to your work here and in the towns before? Was it like a different style, or was it something that you were able to share and people responded to?
Interesting enough, I chose the appropriate state to work in. Massachusetts has town meetings. We have public meetings. So that was a nice transition for me. And in fact, I have shared with people that America wants to export democracy to the rest of the world via regular elections. That should not be. Mm-hmm. Instead, America should find ways of learning the deliberative processes in other communities, similar to our town meetings. Our other communities have some ways of resolving conflict. Mm-hmm. Let's understand those ways and support them. In my view, regular elections are not the answer to democracy in some parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand the way that you just described, your environment growing up. It's like it's imposing a structure upon something that is antithetical to the way that is, and it must be much more difficult and offensive to just rather than encouraging the key concepts of democracy and shared labor.
Yes. In fact, one of the lessons I learned growing up in the village is that life is a struggle. Life is a struggle. It expresses itself in different forms depending on the systems and the structures and the relations in a particular community and at a particular historical time. And so when you go back to how then do you work as a community, you absolutely have to respect the relations that exist in those communities.
Right.
For things to work. And also, when you do that, you are then in a position to treat everybody the same. We've tried here in Hopkinton to really treat everybody the same, whether you support something or you don't support something or you're on the other side. We just have to treat you the same as everybody else. And then life is a struggle, as I said. Therefore, one of the lessons I learned growing up is claim no easy victory. There are no easy victories.
It's interesting. That's a good thought.
Yeah.
So, in your time here, looking back on your tenure as town manager, tell me a little bit about some of the things that you are, really happy that you were able to accomplish, things that you really enjoyed creating or building here in the community.
Yeah, again, it's not so much what the town manager did. It's having been part of a collective effort. And first and foremost, if we're going to define that collective, that's with the people. It's the connections that I've been able to make and not make in this community that I'm proud of. I'm really, really proud of getting to know the residents of this community, the families of this community, and the people who have supported the town in many ways as volunteers. They'll remain near and dear to me.
Yeah.
We also, I think, did good work in managing the financial health of the town. Coming from the financial crisis in 2009 and raising the town's bond rating to AAA. And all of that would not have been possible without the support of the community. The third thing that I think we did very well is, and I enjoyed, working through the local institutions, whether they are town boards or civic organizations, to bring additional resources and services to the community. I really enjoyed doing that. Every time we have an opportunity to build the community's civic organizations, strengthen them, whether it's, for example, working through the Youth and Family Services Department to line up with Project Just Because and other resources in town to help those who are in need in town. That's always very, I'll always cherish that.
Right.
I'll also cherish the work we did with civic organizations, bringing in the invitational entries and then raising funds to support the work of the local nonprofits in town. That would not have been possible without the support and the participation of the local nonprofits. We did some exciting work in preserving and improving the town's infrastructure. As you know, my first assignment was working with the Board of Public Works to build the wastewater treatment plant. After that, we connected the sewer to Milford.
Yep.
And then went on to build amazing facilities for the town. The DPW building, the library, Marathon School, and also taking advantage of public-private partnerships, the work we did at the HCA. We put a great deal of effort in ensuring that the town, as an institution, puts together the policies and procedures that enable the collaboration to occur between departments, also allow us to measure the work that we do. I would have liked to see that work progress to the next level. As you have heard me in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, I've been talking about alignment, where we are saying when we set goals, let's make sure that we're all working towards the same goals. They may be different in terms of area of specialization, but by the end of the day, let's make sure that we are aligned and pushing in the same direction.
Right. So from your vantage point, you know this town inside and out. What would you say, either things to be wary of or things to take strength from? Like, what do you think about where the town is and the direction that it's heading?
And this is influenced by, my answer is influenced by how I grew up.
Okay.
I think there are opportunities for the town. One opportunity is that the way our local government is structured is a combination of independent boards and departments that work under the town manager. One of the most fascinating things I enjoyed was finding ways to then collaborate with independent boards to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. I think the town will benefit immensely in making sure that this structure, where we have independently elected boards and departments that are run by the town manager, that we continue to maintain the communication, the collaboration, and alignment. May be difficult at times, but I think as one of the board members I've worked with constantly assured me, hey, Norman, at times it gets messy. It does get messy. But I see that as an opportunity. Collaborate even when you don't have the authority to do so.
Right. Really echoes back to your very beginning of community,
Yeah.
you know, working together. So my last question for you is, a long time ago, when one of the times that we were talking, you mentioned your past working at Oxfam and having a desire to do work that could benefit, you know, your home community and other communities like-minded. I'm just wondering if this next step in your career is leading you more towards that or more towards family.
It's a combination of both. It's towards family, it's also towards finding a way to help the community that I come from. The most abundant resource in Africa, other than the people, is the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So learning how solar business is conducted here in America will give me an opportunity to transfer that knowledge and also even identify opportunities for growth in Zimbabwe and the other African countries. Since this is your last question, was that your last question?
Yes.
Let me take this opportunity to express gratitude. One of the things that we're constantly working on in any town hall situation is how do we communicate with the residents. For example, the opportunity that I mentioned regarding working alongside independently elected boards, the public does not relate to it that way. They simply say, you're the town manager, you're the town manager. You're town hall, you're town hall. If we have any questions, we're coming to you. Communicating that story, it's a very complex story, would not be possible without the efforts of HCAM and your team. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you and your team. I will also like to thank the community. I also want to take this opportunity to thank my wife. Without her support, her love, her care, I would not have been able to do this job. And that goes along with the support from the rest of the family. I would be amiss if I did not thank the residents of Hopkinton for inviting me to be part of your community. Some of you have invited me to your homes. It's been a very welcoming experience for me, a positive one, a rewarding experience. I am filled with gratitude and joy just thinking about the last 15 years. This town has given my family a great positive experience.
Well, thank you for that, for what you said about what we do. And I just want to say it's a very wise and humble perspective to not forget about your spouse and what they contribute to your own personal success. That's always really wise. And I do think that, you know, your grounding in community reflected into our community and really helped us to get past that financial crisis and to flourish into the community that we have today. So I think you will be deeply missed here. At the same time, I'm very excited for you for what, you know, your next career is going to be able to do, not only for you and your family, but also for your community and the wider world in general. So thank you for all that you've done for us. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I hope to see you again soon.
May come and work for you.
Thank you very much for tuning in for this episode for Hopkinton Works.
Yeah.
Take care.